In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says to his disciples, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." In the fall of 1918, at the request of His Excellency Archbishop Cantwell, the Provincial Superior of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, Mother St. Catherine Beavers, sent 3 sisters to take charge of the newly built school at St. James Parish in Redondo Beach. Mother Alicia Dwyer as Superior, with Sister Magdalena Smith and Sister St. Patrick McAuliffe, formed the first teaching staff at St. James School. As the enrollment grew, more sisters came, and eventually the pastor, Father Nicholas Connolly, purchased a small cottage from the Dominguez family and converted it to a home for the small but growing community. The Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet have faithfully served the school and parish ever since. During their century in charge, the school has thrived, and the parish and community gained thousands of graduates who were well-educated and well-developed Christians, ready to take on whatever new challenges life had waiting for them. St. James School graduates have gone on to do great things, including a Major League Baseball player, Hollywood actors, lawyers, doctors, teachers, pilots, chefs, police and firefighters, multiple soldiers, sailors, airmen and Marines, and even a few priests. All of them can trace their roots right back here to St. James School.
My name is Jacqueline Park Rizzo, and I'm St. James class of 1966. One of the things I loved about this parish and this school was the richness in not just our academics, and I'm going to tell you we got a world-class education here, but also the involvement with the church community.
The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. Coretta Scott King. Lifelong friendships among students, teachers, and parents alike have formed and blossomed through the family-like atmosphere that is known as the St. James community.
For me, St. James was not just a job, I was a part of a family. And I say that because here 22 years later, after I stopped working there, I really enjoyed working with the kids and being a part of such great families. And when I got married back in 1995, I think probably about 100 people from our guest list of about 400 were St. James families.
We're part of each other's families because we live so close together that we have all been through a lot together, and now here we are 40 years after graduating from St. James, and we're still close. So those ways of developing genuine friendships here were special then, and they're still special to me today.
That's probably the best part of teaching so long at St. James, because I teach students that I taught their mom or their dad, and it's a confirmation again that they loved the school. St. James has such a family feel, and that definitely is a part of it.
That I made a lot of good friends here, and church was important, and prayer was important, and learned structure and just how to do what was right and wrong.
A couple of my first friends would have been Jimmy Krisky and Robert Reichman. As you know, at good old Catholic school, one of the things you do when the bell rings is you all line up. So we stood straight in a line with hands at our side and listened to whatever Sister was telling us to do.
Francesca Flanagan. Her mom actually asked me to be her twin for Twin Day because she was too shy to talk to me. And we dressed up with all the Rugrats on our t-shirts and shared Twizzlers, and we've pretty much been best friends ever since kindergarten. She went to Disneyland with us yesterday.
Laura Marie. We became friends in being row partners in second grade. We used to fight about a lot of things, but then we realized we had more things in common than we thought we did, and so we are great friends to this day.
Easily my first friend is Chris Ireland. He was probably the first kid I got to know. Chris and I, we were pretty inseparable from about the first grade to fifth grade. We did everything. He also had cystic fibrosis, so he was constantly sick. So we'd go to his house and just play video games. One of my favorite games that I always played would be King Griffey Jr. Slugfest, or it was Super Nintendo game, NBA Jam. NBA Jam was always fun. He wasn't able to play a lot of sports, but he loved sports, so we'd be able to play with each other in that way. And then when we got into about sixth grade, he was limited in the activities he was able to do, so we kind of more or less just hung out with him after school. And Daniel Strommel and Brian Minton and myself, we'd play all the various sports that were active at St. James.
St. James has been one of those things that really was the constant in my life and provided me with phenomenal friendships that I really treasure to this day.
In kindergarten, when we had the spring and Christmas sings, I was in kindergarten, and we were preparing the day before. I don't remember if it was the day before or the day of for the Christmas sing. We would all end up at the church in the morning, and we'd all go up right in front of the altar to prepare to sing. And I remember that in fairness, I remember telling Sister Mary Margaret right before that I did not feel very good. And then as I was up there, I believe I was pretty tall back then, so I was at the top row. I managed to projectile vomit on the rest of my class while up on the altar. And I remember it landed on a few people in particular. That was really unfortunate. I do apologize for throwing up on those that were in front of me.
Girl Scouts, brownies, second grade. There was a whole group of us who started out in brownies and made our way up through, I think it's high school, and then we thought it was like kind of like not cool to be a Girl Scout in high school. But we earned a Marian Award, which is through the Catholic Church. It's called the Marian Award Handbook for Candidates, and we went to St. Vibian's Cathedral to receive our medal, and there was different requirements that we had to perform, and it was signed off March 19th, 1966, and the Daily Breeze printed our photo of the group of our that earned the Marian Award and printed an article for us. And these are the close friends that I had all through grammar school here, and it was cool.
So both my parents were and kind of still are really involved in the St. James world, particularly the school when we were here. My mom always got picked for coming in and giving the family life talk, which was, I think it was the 4th or 5th grade. And it's where my mom, who's a physician, would come in and explain to the kids like the birds and the bees and like the puberty and like the fun changes your body is going through at this time, which to be sitting in the classroom and listening to your mom lecture on that was awful. So when she wouldn't want to pick on anybody else to give examples, so then of course she would pick on her kids. So if it was like hypotheticals, which were like so off base hypotheticals, it was always like, well, if Ashley were to do this, and as a prepubescent kid in the 4th or 5th grade, it's not what you want for yourself in the class. But it was fun. I think that's the kind of probably what everybody echoes. It's the community feel. So it's like, even though maybe that's not ideal, like it's your mom and you have your mom or other parents would come in to talk about whatever the topic was. It's the community that you get from the school. And that's, I think it probably is the biggest thing that I took from the school.
Our hearts were made for you, O Lord, and they are restless until they rest in you. St. Augustine of Hippo. St. James School is an extension of the Church. It has always strived to teach its students the fundamentals of the Catholic faith, providing the children with a foundation for a purposeful life, keeping God at the center.
We got walked across the street to do penance for the first time. Our first communion was in the church. Confirmation was in the church.
My class was the first to make our first communion in the new church. We had to make our first confession in the hall, but our class, and we thought that was cool too.
Father O'Gorman was the pastor at the time. And there were a couple more priests I remember, Father Miskala, and there was another tall Irish red-headed priest that was here. And then Father Joseph Karp was here for a while, and he was Polish. And I just remember the priests used to come in the classroom and they used to just visit to see how we were doing in class, and they would bless us. And they would come in to ask us our catechism questions because we had to memorize the catechism.
Whenever I have a question about my faith, they're always there to answer me. And they encourage me to go to church every Sunday.
I started going to Mass before school here. They used to let us go and then be a little bit late for school. So that was neat to start the day that way. Learned how to connect with God first thing in the morning. So from those back in 5th grade days.
It laid the foundation and it gave me something to go off of. And I think that the foundation is the most important part, because once you have the foundation, you do with it what you want to. The significance of going to a Catholic school and Catholic church and having that community, it's almost reaffirmed it for me, because I guess sometimes you learn better when you teach.
Really the rationale behind really wanting my kids to go here is just that it provides such a foundation for the Catholic faith, provides a community for them. They get to see their friends at church. They get to learn the songs at school, and it's a really special thing for them, and they get to enjoy it.
That we teach religion all day. We start our day with prayer together as a school community, and we go into our classrooms, and as a class, we pray together. We incorporate religion, the life of Jesus, social justice, love, depending on the grade you're in and how much in depth. But every subject we can incorporate Jesus' life and how to be whole people to serve our school, our community, globally. And we can do that through religion.
I did religious affairs in student government. I got to learn a lot about the rosary and different kind of practices throughout the faith. Also for academic decathlon, I did religion both 7th and 8th grade years, so I was pretty connected. So learned a lot about the history behind it and the faith and tradition itself.
Our faith, it's throughout the day. In a public school, you couldn't talk about God. It's never a part of the day when we have good times together, bad times together. Our faith brings us all together. So that's kind of the heart of our classroom.
Am I still a practicing Catholic? Only on Sunday. I started to go to Cal State Long Beach. And so on my days off or afternoons off, I would go and help out at St. James School as a teacher aide with various teachers, but mostly in the 1st grade, Sister Georgina. And that was because I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And so I was discerning that in my college years. And then my 3rd year in college, Sister Georgina asked me once, "Have you ever thought about being a priest?" And I thought, well, yeah, kinda, but I don't really like priests, especially the ones I was working for. However, I thought about it again. And by the end of that year, I decided to enter our seminary, St. John's Seminary. And so once again, venturing down from Camarillo on my days off or vacation, I would always stop by the school and visit the kids and the teachers and up until the time I was ordained.
No Catholic school can be effective without dedicated Catholic teachers, convinced of the great ideal of Catholic education. Pope St. John Paul II. The school has been blessed with many talented teachers throughout the years. From the early days when the school was staffed entirely by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, to modern times, where the lay staff continues their work of giving the children the essentials of a well-rounded and faith-based education.
When thinking about my time here at St. James and thinking about Evan here at St. James, I really reminisce about the 4th grade, having the same teacher in the same classroom. And really, it's an incredible experience for him and for me to re-enter the same classroom, set up the same way with the same teacher. You know, she hasn't changed a bit since day one. And I know I had an amazing time. She was one of my favorite teachers, and I know she's one of his as well.
Mr. Wibberley. He was an English teacher, and he commanded attention and demanded a lot of his students. He graded people, he put you in order of your percentage points throughout the year, and I rose to the top, and I was number 1 when I had to do my oral report of flashcards of all of the English definitions that we had learned for the entire year. And it was awesome. And I still have my English notebook compiled of all of the stories that we had to go through, and conjugating sentences and definitions of adverbs, nouns, and superlatives, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually still reference that book from time to time today. I will keep it forever, and my kids are going to go through it as well.
I don't know how rare this might be, but I could name off each of my 9 different teachers that I had through my time at St. James. You want me to name all of them? Okay, all right. And the grades. I had Mrs. Spencer in kindergarten, Miss Schiappa. The names may have changed. Mrs. Schiappa in 1st grade, Miss O'Neill in 2nd grade, Mrs. White in 3rd grade, Miss McDermott in 4th grade, Mrs. Johnson in 5th grade, Mrs. Mock in 6th grade, Mrs. O'Dowd in 7th grade, and Sister Lana in 8th grade.
Junior high, particularly because I had her 2 years in a row, was Miss Alice Hemans. I had her both in 6th and 7th grade there at the school. She later on in her life went on to become a nun herself. She was one of my favorite lay teachers. In 8th grade, of course, I had, we called her the drill sergeant, but Sister Dennis Ann. And Sister Dennis Ann was just a wonderful woman and a tough teacher, but a very good nun as well.
Sister Lana's kind of the best of both because she's a no-nonsense lady, but she still has a very human, motherly aspect to her. So she knew how to enforce the rules and when to enforce the rules, but then obviously had a good dose of understanding and appreciation as well, which she probably used a lot more for me than other students.
I have to say that it was Sister Mary Bertrand. Her personality was so great. She was so at ease with the kids. And she was the one that impressed me the most. I loved the way she taught us. And I probably used a lot of that when I went into teaching, because I'm a retired teacher. She's one of the people probably that made me want to be a teacher.
Sister Rose Damien comes to mind. She just took me a special, kindness to me, I felt. And she was just real, looking back now, personal and just really nice. And Sister, I think it was George Ann in 8th grade, was very interesting. She had her hands full with all of us girls.
Definitely Sister Lana. My favorite principal, just to be fair, was also Sister Mary Margaret. Yeah, my favorite teacher in the elementary school would have to be Mrs. McDermott. She was the nicest, kindest teacher we had. I could kind of get away with anything. I was used to get in trouble for being chatty with my desk mates.
And another teacher that stands out greatly for me is Mrs. Brown. She really graded hard and pushed me to really focus on expanding my ideas, expanding my thoughts, using proper grammar as well, good penmanship. All of those things were important to her, and I can remember many late nights sitting at the kitchen table with my dad, going over my rough drafts over and over and over and rewriting and erasing and rewriting until I could finally
come up with a presentable piece to turn in the next day.
Mrs. McDermott, she taught in a different way that I had been taught before. It was more of an experience for her and an experience for us. She read to us, and I remember her clearly saying, you know what, if you need to doodle or do something just to think about it, do that. And being in education myself, it made me really think about how the different ways that students learn, the different modalities, and it really was one of those things that was impactful. I loved Mrs. Venegas, a great sense of humor. So those were some of my favorite teachers here.
I'm not going to answer that one. I don't want to hurt any feelings. I'm not going to name one. They were all great. I feel like they all played a very important role that together formed a wonderful education.
Well, St. James as a whole, as a church and a school, was a part of my life because I grew up a block away. And I walked through the church parking lot to get to the school, and I went through the school all 8 years. And so from the time of growing up as a very young boy, I'd hear those church bells ringing from my house, summoning me to Sunday Mass. Of course, by the time I was old enough to serve Mass, I was very much part of the altar server program. But also then going to the school and helping out with all the things that the school was involved with, whether it was selling ice cream or hot lunch, or being part of student council, being an altar server, of course. The school was very much a part of my life. And I remember the day of graduation, eighth grade graduation. We had our 2 dances, and then graduation came. And I remember a lot of us just being in tears because we realized this was the end of that part of our journey in life and what was next.
Sister Mary Margaret was a wonderful boss. I'll tell you, point blank, she's probably one of the best bosses I ever had. And Sister Mary Margaret allowed me to just be who I was and be a mentor to a lot of these younger guys.
Sister Mary Margaret has been a person that the teachers have always been able to go to for a small problem, maybe with a child that we want to help, talking to a parent using the right words, something in our curriculum, a better idea, teaching religion if I wanted to get a point across, incorporating an art project with it. And then also on a personal level, if we were having something going on in our personal life, we could go to her and ask for some guidance.
Sister Mary Margaret came at a time where we desperately needed somebody to be willing to take on a big task with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, wisdom, courage in some cases, good planning. And Sister did all of those things. And as I've told my 4th graders, our school has gradually grown from a rather small campus to a much larger campus. But Sister's also a mentor. She's a friend. She's your person you go to when you have a problem to take care of in the class and you don't quite know what to do. I think of Sister Mary Margaret as kind of your favorite aunt. She would be the person you go to for fun, and she's also the person you go to for help.
January 2018 marks the 100th anniversary of St. James School, as well as 100 years of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet being in a leadership position at the school and ministering to the parishioners of St. James Church. As a sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet, I'm proud and honored to have been a part of the leadership at St. James School for more than a quarter of those 100 years. During the years that I've been principal at St. James School, I've had the privilege of ministering with many outstanding teachers, staff, and dedicated parents. Together, we've worked to make St. James School one of the top schools in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Each of us at St. James School follow the call of Jesus as we continue his work in the world today. We work to facilitate the development of confident, competent, and caring students who will grow into responsible members of their church, their local and global communities. My prayer is that during the next 100 years of St. James School, the school will carry on the rich traditions of faith, academic excellence, and service. Happy birthday, St. James School.
Happy birthday, St. James.
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 Happy birthday, St. James School.
Happy birthday, St. James.
Happy birthday, St. James.
Happy birthday, St. James.
Happy birthday, St. James. Happy birthday, St. James. Happy birthday, St. James.
Happy birthday, St. James, with a lot of love and fondness, fond memories.